Today's story from the other side flips the narrative we've been hearing. This guest was the one who fell into infidelity. This was the guest whose partner chose to work through it. And this was the guest who ultimately still decided that divorce was the best option for her family. I can't wait to share today's story with you. Welcome to the Crazy Ex-Wives Club, a podcast dedicated to helping women navigate the emotional journey that is divorce. I'm your host, Erica, and if you're trying to figure out life after the big D, welcome to the club. Whether you're contemplating divorce or dealing with the aftermath or any of the many phases in between, the club has got you covered. Each week, you'll hear stories from women who have been in your shoes. This isn't about spilling tea on divorce details. This is about giving you the tools to take control of your own healing journey. Listen in weekly for advice, tips, and tools to help you move through each stage of the process. Welcome to another episode of the Crazy Ex-Wives Club. I'm your host, Erica, and today I have Rachel with us. Rachel is here to share her story through divorce and the things that brought her there. So welcome, Rachel. Thank you for joining.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. When you had reached out, Rachel was one of the wonderful people that reached out and submitted online saying, hey, I would be willing to share my story. And as we chatted, it was such a brave choice because Rachel is sitting on the other side of what a lot of our listeners and followers are experiencing. And so, Rachel, why don't you do us the honor and tell us a little bit about what your divorce story looked like?
Yeah, so like you said, I reached out to you saying, hey, have you thought about maybe doing a story from this perspective? The perspective being that a lot of the stories have been from women who have been betrayed or cheated on or, been in a very terrible situation in their marriage. Whereas for me, my situation was that I was the one that had an affair and then went through a divorce from that. But it's not without the pain and the hurt and a lot of the things that still get spoken about in terms of separation and divorce and the grief that comes with that. And another layer though, because yes, you're losing this marriage and this family, but you were very much a party to it. So yeah, that's sort of my perspective, but also in the sense that afterwards he stayed. So he was there and he was willing to make it work. And for the better part of a year, we moved through a lot of things. But ultimately, even though he was willing to stay, I chose to leave. So again, being the one that chooses it and still the pain and the grief and the things that you move through, even though that's your side of the story.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I thank you for sharing that part because you are right. We almost always have stories coming from the other side, right? Where the woman was really the one who had a fight to be able to move through something that was heavy. And you too had a fight to be able to move through something that was heavy. You had made the choice and had fallen into the path of infidelity. I've talked a lot about this. For the majority of people, it's not that we set out to go do it, right? It's not that somebody's like, "Oh, this is what I'm going to go do. I'm going to go find a person and move through this." It just happens little by little. The feelings develop and then all of a sudden you're in it. But with that comes a lot of shame and guilt. And so you then moved into that space of trying to work through that and ultimately landing in a place where you were the one that was like, I don't think this is going to work. And that is just as big of an uphill climb as being on the other side of the infidelity or being, married to someone who's got more narcissistic tendencies. So let's talk a little bit about shame and guilt because they're so heavy. They're so heavy. And I think we all find ourselves in a place of having some of that because even, when we choose to be the one who files, there's some shame and some guilt around like, did we try enough? Is this really the right choice? So what came up for you in that area?
Well, you mentioned about other people moving through something heavy to get to where they are. And quite rightly, yes, like there was heaviness in my marriage beforehand, in not in the same sense as I think other people would have experienced. But for me, and I'm sure that there are people out there who the infidelity is serial and it's an ego thing and, those kind of things. But for me, my affair came because I was feeling disconnected, because I was feeling unheard, because, and like you said, it's all those little things that chip away. So in the leaving, it was actually leaving a marriage that really wasn't great to start with. So I think after the fact, after he found out, and like I said, it was about a year that we tried. And again, very much so, we tried everything we could. I think we really both needed to be able to say that before walking away. We have two young girls, so it wasn't just a relationship, it was a family with children, which obviously is another part of that decision. But ultimately at the end, I just had this quiet voice that was, and it did get louder, don't get me wrong, it got quite loud towards the end, that just said, this is done. This, you need to leave. Like, you need to walk away now. But I also had this voice, and I remember sitting in the car one day, and I literally had these two voices having this massive argument in my head. Like, what is wrong with you? Stay. He's a good man. You need to stay. And then this other voice going, you don't love him. You need to leave. And I literally, it was almost like I could sit there and I was observing this conversation between the two parts of myself. And I felt like I was going insane, because I didn't know which voice to listen to. They were both my voices, but I didn't know what to listen to. And I think what I've learnt over the last couple of years is trying to find the difference between that intuition, like that quiet inner knowing, and then that desperate ego, that desperate, like, oh my God, like, because I think the things that are true for you and that are real, they're quiet. It's this quiet whisper that doesn't go away. And that's from love. That's from self-love. That's from your soul just going, this is what you need to do. But then you've got that other voice like, don't leave. You're going to break up your family. You should do this. You should do that. And what I've come to identify that as is my ego screaming like, you can't do this. You have to do this. It's very fear-based. And whenever you're doing anything out of fear, it's that desperate voice. And it was that quiet voice that just in the background, you need to go. And I was afraid. I was afraid of the guilt and the shame, like you said.
I was gonna say, that is such a powerful awareness, and you're right, you're sitting in the moment. I mean, how many of you guys listening right now know what that feels like? There are these 2 voices, and they're very loud, ego is very loud, and I think when I first started learning about ego, right, we don't mean the ego that's like, "Ooh, I'm so cool," and, "Ooh, I can go do all these things." There is this other part. It is this ego, this fake inside self-identity part that tries to keep us small. It tries to keep us safe. It tries to help us continue in whatever we already currently know, even if we know that that's not the best thing. And so being able to hear those 2 voices, the first place that we can now start to make a choice. For a long time, that ego voice in my head, the fear-based voice in my head was all I could hear. I didn't know how I was gonna start over. I didn't know how any of this was gonna be in the future. I really felt like at 35, like my life was kinda over. Like this was it. How was I ever gonna restart? And that's a lot of that ego voice trying to keep you small. And then there comes that little like knocking, that whisper, what you said. And it's so true. It's such a quiet whisper. It's such a like, but that this is a choice you need to make. And then ego shows up and is like, oh, but what would happen? And so then we don't listen to it and we don't take that step forward. And it's such a brave moment to know, amidst all the other things, he was a good man. He was a good dad. He had forgiven you for the, making the, quote unquote mistake that happened, right? The thing that everybody says is, oh, if there's infidelity, you have to leave. This is not savable. And the reality is that it is savable if it's the right choice. And so being able to hear that quiet voice and that whisper tell you that it's not is so incredibly powerful. So thank you for sharing that, because I think a lot of our listeners, that's the biggest question I get. Am I supposed to stay or am I supposed to go? Where's the whisper telling you? Because it's there.
It's a
We're just not hearing
certainty.
it.
Like the whisper says, you need to leave. The ego, the fear says you should stay. What if? Like your intuition and that knowing will never present you with a question. It's like, I should do this, or what if I do this, or what if this happens? Like, and you said that the ego tries to keep you small, but I think the word that resonates more with me that you also said is it tries to keep you safe. So it's those things when you're younger, and, you know, something happens, oh, that doesn't feel great. I don't like that feeling. So to avoid that, I'm going to do this from now on. And I think one of the things that for a lot of women, and particularly for me, is that people pleasing and self-sacrificing. And we always put ourselves second. And so I can't leave. What about the kids? I can't leave because of this. What about this? But when that people pleasing comes from a place of fear, like, yeah, it's very loving to give of yourself in that way when it's from a real open, loving place. But if it's from fear of like, if I don't do this, he's going to leave. If I don't please this person, they're going to get mad and they're going to stop loving me. And then it's that fear of love being withdrawn. And I think for me, that was a lot of my marriage and a lot of the fear in leaving. So, yeah, it's that safety. But then you come to the leaving and there is so much guilt and shame. And I think that was probably one of the big things we talked about, of moving through that and how to actually move through that, because it's devastating. And you're probably aware of the difference between guilt and shame. Guilt is like, I've done something that's wrong, whereas shame is, I am a bad person because of this. And guilt is healthy. It shows you, you know, things that don't align with your values and you feel guilty about that. And that's a good sort of signpost. But when you turn that into, I am an awful person, that's when you get stuck in that loop.
I agree with you.
Yeah. I think the thing for me was to move through that, I had to go through it, like really through it. Like a lot of people, I imagine, and look, I did this too, distract with dating, distract with alcohol, go out partying to numb because you don't want to feel it. I'm fine. You know, there was a reason that it happened and I'm not this perpetrator, and you don't want to feel it. But when you do, you break your own heart. Like, you actually break your own heart, and it's really hard to face yourself. But you have to, if you're going to move through it, you have to face yourself, all those parts of yourself, and forgive all those parts of yourself.
That is such a key piece, and actually, I've never heard somebody say it that way, and it's so true. You are breaking your own heart when you are making this choice, even when you know that it is the right choice, even when you know, there are those moments, those glimpses that come through where you're like, "This is gonna be okay. I know this is the right choice," but then that gut-wrenching pain of having a broken heart, and you are part of that reason, right? Because you did choose to move forward. You know, I same thing. So I was on the other side, right? Like, he had been the one that was cheating, but I was the one that filed because I got to that whisper. I got to that point where I said, this is not it. This chapter is over. Let's move forward with grace and love, and hopefully we both find the right person to move into. But those years in between of not avoiding, you know, COVID stirred that up for a lot of people. When we went on lockdown, y'all lost your avoidance coping mechanisms. You couldn't just go
Yes.
out and stay busy. You couldn't keep running around. You weren't just out at the bars talking to new people. You were home alone, staring in a
Mm.
mirror. And if you've ever done mirror work, it is intense. You don't think it's intense. You know, we look in the mirror every single day. Every day we look, or we're on Zoom cameras all day long and we're looking at our own face and the other person's face, like we see ourselves all the time. But have you ever actually sat in front of the mirror so close, like sit on the floor in front of the mirror and look directly in your own eyes? Like looking back into your own soul to have that conversation with your inner self. You know it was hard. You know it was painful. You know it broke your heart. And you know that you're picking up the pieces and you're mending what broke and you're moving through the journey to find out who you get to become on the other side.
And it is moving. You have to just keep moving, and you'll be knocked down so low, but you know, you crawl on the ground, your knees are bleeding, you keep going, like, because there is relief on the other side. There really, really is. And I think my relationship with my ex, coming through that, and we have a very good relationship now. He has asked me before, if the shoe was on the other foot, would we have this same relationship? And I think I couldn't hand on heart say that I would. I couldn't hand on heart say that I wouldn't be there going, you're awful and you've done this, and be full of hatred and wishing him ill and all that kind of thing. But the fact that he was able to do that for me, I will never forget what he did for me in that. But it wasn't instant. And I think how we got to that point was initially when I was sitting in the guilt and the shame, and we had issues come up about the kids, or, there'd be something that happens and he would question me on something, or he would bring a concern into the foreground, I would get defensive. I would snap back at him because whatever he was saying was activating that shame that was still sitting in me. And I'm like, oh, don't push that part, because if you say that, I have to face this. And of course, I'd be like, oh, that's too painful. So go on the attack back. So when you do move through that forgiveness and understanding of yourself, it takes that trigger away and that trauma so that you can allow it. And it was actually when I moved through that and I accepted that in myself and fully felt the weight of that in myself, that I was then no longer triggered by the things that he did, that I was actually softer with him, that then he was able to become softer with me. It's an interesting nuance. There was, even the other night, he said the change overnight with the kids is hard. And we were messaging about something. He said, I find these nights really hard. And he said, I'll look after my girls for me. And I was thinking, normal or beforehand, I would have been like, what, don't you think I can take care of the girls? You think you're so perfect? And I would have got quite triggered by that. But now it's like yeah, it's tough. And I'm sorry that this is our reality. Not a sorry, like, oh my God, I'm sorry, but just it hurts me too that this is our reality, and it makes me sad that we're here. But I will look after your girls. And I was able to just give acceptance and reassurance instead of coming with the defensiveness. And that's what I think helped us heal our relationship post divorce.
Right? It continues to require a lot of grace being given because we do have those pieces of ourselves that we're still reacting to. And that is such a huge healing piece. When we get triggered, when we react to something, and it happens to all of us. I mean, it still happens to me on certain subjects. The boyfriend asked something about the dishes upstairs, like, is the kid going to come wash this? Right? Like my son. And I got so defensive about, like, I wasn't parenting correctly. And he's like, whoa, not at all. Like, take let a little air out of that one, because that's not what I'm coming at you with. But we have all these internal stories. We have all of these things already built up around expectations or what it means about us, about somebody else. And so when you move into that co-parenting, it is still co-creating. It is still an emotional experience. It looks different. Just because the divorce is done doesn't mean that you're never talking to this person again. You are going to continue to build with them. And I mean, I think that the goal is exactly how you guys are moving through it. How can we move through it with acceptance? Each person gives a little. We're not going to be perfect. 2 steps forward, 1 step back. But overall, you're always moving forward. And each time you get a little bit better. And each time you're able to hold a little bit more space and see that at the end of the day, divorce rocks everyone's world that it was affected. It does. It rocks even your friends, like what they had thought of how this couple was going to continue on. It affects your family. It affects those in that family, husband, wife, kids that are in it. And so everybody's got their feels and has their growth that they're being called through. And so how do we just give a little space, give a little like, maybe I'm reading it wrong on how it's coming in, and I don't really have to react to it right now.
I think any time that there is that heat or that energy in you, like you said, it's something from the past. It's your own narrative that gets triggered. And like you mentioned about am I not parenting right? Because asked my son about the dishwasher. And I think even that comment from my partner where he said, look after my girls for me. And my thought probably previously would have been, I didn't look after them in having an affair, in betraying the family, in leaving. I was not looking after them. And I think that I wasn't being a good mother. I, would have triggered that in me, which when you understand that and you understand where that energy is coming from in yourself, you can actually reflect. And even with your point where you said, you don't think I'm a good mother, like, and actually, where does that come from? Getting curious with that side when, you have this energy that comes up, this defensiveness or this anger, because underneath it, there is always some sort of pain or something. There's something softer underneath it, and getting curious about what that is and getting really honest with yourself.
That is the work, you guys. And I love that part. I love that part. And I love helping people explore that part. Because for me, after he said it, I was like, okay, so where am I reacting from? oh, my poor son, he's a child of divorce. I have to try and protect him from as much pain as possible. We've only moved in, because we moved into the boyfriend's house almost a year ago. And of course, he's incredibly kind and he's like, it's our house. You guys, this is your house too. But there is that feeling, right? We're still new. We're still settling in. Oh, mommy has to make sure that her little child, who is turning 14 next week and is not so little, is okay. And so a lot of my own reactions still in parenting, I definitely err on the side of too protective, of too like, "Oh, he's had so much pain, what can I do to stop anymore?" And that's not always the right answer because sometimes it's a disservice. Like you're taking on too much for your kids. This is part of their journey too. I'm creating an internal story for my child that he doesn't have at all. He's like, whatever, I'll come wash the pot and pan. Yeah, I didn't finish it yet. Great. We sometimes, as those caretakers, as the one who took on too much, we try and take on their emotional burden too. And we try and protect them. And that only makes it harder on us. But I love that point. Like, you guys, when something hurts, why? What is it? What's the story that it's creating in your mind? If that hurt is real, what does it mean about you? Where did this come up before? And what are you ready to see differently? Because once we can see things differently, we can feel things differently. If you're feeling overwhelmed, exhausted from overthinking, and stuck in uncertainty, this message is for you. You don't have to keep feeling that way. Inside the club, you'll find a safe space to rediscover who you are, clarify what you want, and determine how you want to move forward. Surrounded by women who truly understand and guided by expert support, you are not alone on this journey. Join us at thecrazyexwivesclub.com/the club. It's time to reclaim your life.
Yeah, and I think there was a point, and I think when you're moving in with your partner and when new partners get involved. So the girl's dad is with a new person now, and she's got two boys similar age to my girls, so very much a little family unit. They're not living together, but it's having another person come into that dynamic. And I think it changes. I mean, they're having not difficulties, but merging the families, and my girls are adjusting to having new people in their life.
Hard.
In their dad's got other children and another woman, and particularly for my eldest, who's 13 and not such a baby anymore either, it's almost like this power struggle with them, and like, who's the alpha in the house, and this woman is taking my dad away and he doesn't love me anymore. And I fed into that a little bit within myself when all of this sort of happened. It was around about Christmas time. And I had to be really careful with my energy and not allowing that to be the girl's story, because I felt it was the first Christmas that I didn't get to spend with the kids. Even in the last couple of years, we were both, local, and we both had time with the girls. I didn't get to see them this previous Christmas, and she was with them. And then the other thing that happened at that time as well, and I didn't know she was with them at the time, my eldest rang, and she had gone through her first cycle as a woman, and she rang me and she said, Mum, this has happened for me. And I obviously hurt to not be there, but super excited. And then she told me about, what happened and everything. And she said, oh, she was there to help me. And I just, oh my God, it was just took the wind out of me. And I did react in that moment. I think it was very hard not to. And then I spent a little bit of time afterwards having to then reassure my daughter, like, it's okay, because my energy about that situation feeds her and tells a story for her. And I think you need to be very aware of that. I have a life coach that I speak to as well, which, highly recommend to be able to have someone that you can talk through these things with. And I was quite hysterical. I actually rang her or messaged her, and she rang me and she's like, are you okay? And I was quite hysterical, but I was like, oh, I just feel like the universe just keeps kicking me in the ass right now. Like it's one thing after another. And she said, Rach, it's just life. No one's kicking your ass. It is just life. It is just what you are moving through next. And to reframe and go, aren't you glad that she was there? Like, isn't that what you want for your child? And actually reframe it to some gratitude and appreciation, because what is the alternative? That these kids have two parents who hate each other, a mum who's bagging out the new woman in their life. And what reality does that create for those kids? And So, and you have to dig deep. It's not easy. And, you know, like I still slip up and it's a long road, but you catch yourself. And like you said, the next time you do it differently and you do it differently, and it does become easier. But 9 out of 10 times you get it wrong. But it's that one time you get it right, and that one time you
Yeah.
get it right. And then two
Mhm.
times you get it right. And you keep going.
What a powerful lesson too for these children of divorce when they're watching their parents now move through healthy co-parenting and healthy relationships, because it is hard. You guys, it hurts and stings so bad. My moment like yours where I lost it was over the Harry Potter books. So dumb now, but in the moment, this was a thing. I had been at every Harry Potter like midnight book drop. I had read all the books. I had kept all of the hardcover books that I had gotten, and it was something I wanted to give to my son. It was something I wanted to share with him. And at that time, ex-husband's the other woman became the fiance for 6 years before that dissolved, but she gave him her set, and I lost my mind over it, and it was just books. Turns out my kid doesn't even really like Harry Potter, so it didn't matter, but in the moment, it crushed me. It was like this thing that I had waited for. It was part of what I was looking forward to being a parent, and, big emotions are real. And so having those big emotions, that's okay. We can't hurt other people. Okay, so if we let them out and somebody hears us speak unkindly about the other person, then we got to clean it up. But our kids being able to watch somebody say, "Hey, that was not about you. That was about me. I just was bummed. I thought it was something we were going to share, but I love that she was there for you. I love that she helped you through this huge milestone." Because we have to remove ourselves and say, am I happy that this person is loving my child enough to show up for them? Because the other story or the other thing that I'm sure you are also starting to look at is when you become a step parent. So my boyfriend has 3 kids that I step parent with, and I have my one. It's just not the same, right? When you give birth to a kid and it's yours, there is that ingrained automatic love that is always there. You can see that they're being a shit sometimes. You can see the places that they need to grow and evolve, but overall, there just is you just love them. And it hits you, that wave. I was driving in the car yesterday taking my kid to his baseball game, and I just like looked over at him and I just was like, "Oh, I love this little human so much." That's not ingrained with you when it's a stepchild. They're choosing to love those children. They're choosing to show up in those kids' lives. And you hope and pray that it is somebody who chooses to show up in a healthy way, in a supportive way, in a way that can help your children have access to another adult. We look at it like what his kids will tell me are different than what they'll share with him, than what they'll share with their mom. And it's no fault to anybody. It is that we all have different relationships with different key adults, key figures in our lives. And so having that strong adult relationship with somebody outside of the mom and the dad can be incredibly beneficial for these kids.
And someone to help share the burden as well. Like, there have been some things that have come up that, I've been told after the weekend of, this happened, and they told me this, and I'm like, oh God, I'm so glad I didn't have to go through that one. Because, when you parent your children through some heavy stuff, friendship issues or school, and it takes it out of you, right? Like, it's like, oh God, that's hard to sit in this with you. But when someone else gets to do the heavy lifting as well, it's kind of like, oh, I just got the story of what happened a week later, and I didn't have to actually do that. And they have that feminine person to help them through some of those things. I actually have immense gratitude now. And I think that's probably one of the other big key pointers is the gratitude piece. And I remember so many times, gratitude journal how you feel, pick 3 things a day that you're grateful for. And I'm like, oh, for God's sake, this is just, whatever, for so many years. And it's not so much the regimented practice of do it every day that, but it's trying to build that habit. And I got to that point in myself anyway of actually seeing beautiful things in my life and in the world and actually acknowledging that within myself. And I do it quite naturally now. Just, wow, like I'm grateful for this. And wow, this is a beautiful thing that's come out of this. And it's again, one of those things, 9 times you will not see it. And then once you will. And so, yeah, I think that habit, 3 things a day, it's trying to create that habit in you. I was never good at those daily habit things, but that is ultimately where I ended up.
Yeah. The gratitude or an appreciation practice is such a powerful practice,
Mm.
and it's something so small. There's tons of books out there on it. In fact, if you pop over to the Etsy shop for the club, I actually have like a selenite heart. Trying to see if I have one right around me right now. But there was a practice I started with that every single night before I went to bed, I ran through the day to find the best moment. What's the one thing I am most grateful for today? Because a lot of days, gratitude felt hard. A lot of days, it felt like the universe was out to get me. A lot of days, I felt like I was never going to get my feet underneath me. And I just kept like, how come he got to move on? How come he gets all the things? Like all those stories would run rampant. In having just a small gratitude practice, I did a list of 10 things I'm grateful for every morning. So, very similar to your three. I did a rock at the end of the night. It starts to shift things gradually, then suddenly, you guys. That is always how it goes. Like all of a sudden the trees look different. All of a sudden the clouds are really beautiful. Those moments filled my heart. Like I was like, "Oh, I can breathe. I can feel good in this moment." And you're literally training your mind to seek out the positive things because remember that little ego voice? Our mind and our nervous system are wired for safety and to keep us alive, which means they're constantly scanning for what might go wrong or where is something bad or what do I need to look out for. They're pre programmed that way. We have to write a new program, we have to write a new script, and it's a muscle that we have to work. And so, little tiny bits, little tiny bits. We actually work on that in the club. So, in the divorce membership, if you're looking for your space, we start with that gratitude practice because something so tiny, 1 minute a day, can start to shift everything around you.
And you're right, it does creep up. It's hard and it's hard and it's hard. And then one day it just drops in and you go, holy shit, wow, like that actually came naturally. And months, years, like I don't know, but keep going because it does land, it does become alive in you. And that's, and it's the best feeling when you actually look back at where you've been and how far you've come and it's there. It was interesting. I watched Paddington in Peru with my youngest one a couple of months ago. And for anyone who hasn't seen it, not to spoil the ending, but he ends up finding his bear family and the parents and the children are there. And the daughter's like, Mum, he's going to go live with his bear family. He's not going to come back. Like, that's really hard. And, how can you let him do that? And she said, it's just what happens next. And it's just allowing those things, not making it bad, not making it wrong, but we're moving forward into what's next. And divorce, separation, it's just what happens next. And there is more after that. Like, it's not the end of the road. And I don't know if anyone else has done this. I know a lot of people I know have, but post-divorce tattoos is is a thing that women do here in Australia, not in general, but a lot of people I know, it's like, oh, I've got a tattoo. And I've got this too shall pass on my forearm. And it was a reminder, and I got that not long after our separation. And when the girls were moving through some pretty chaotic emotions, and I would get quite stuck, I would freeze of like, oh my God, I can't do this. I can't handle this. But it would always pass. And it was that reminder to me of nothing is permanent and you will move through this. And it's safe to sit and lean into whatever this is, because what you resist persists. You can fight against it all you want, but it's there. And the only way to let it move is to actually face it and lean into it and let it move. And it will pass.
It will pass. And you're expanding at such a rapid rate in your emotional resiliency, in your ability to cope, in your ability to hold more on your own. And you do get through it. And so I think for any of those you guys listening, I do have a couple tattoos. I got one during it. It's on my wrist. It says slow down because I landed myself definitely in the world of separation and divorce for pushing too hard, too fast, push, push, push. Like I was like, we have to get it all done. So my first lesson was slow the F down, just appreciate exactly where you're at. And then after I got divorced, I did my whole thigh. I should probably put that on. It's on my other page, but I'll put it up there. But it was all the things that I loved in life. Like I built literally a portrait of the things that bring me joy, so that every single day I looked at it and I was like, this brings me joy. I love the artist who did it, the things that are in it. Everything about it is reminding me that there is joy, there's beauty everywhere, and we get to choose that instead of choosing to stay stuck. So for those of you guys who are somewhere in it, right? If you're in that uncertain side, here's my deep talk for you. You do know the answer. You just don't want to admit it. And that hurts a lot. And I guarantee that you're probably crying as I say this, because we have all sat in that space of knowing we know what the answer is, but we don't want to say it out loud. And so if that's the space that you're in, cry it out, journal it out, write out why it is the thing that you just didn't ever want to accept. I never wanted to be divorced. I wanted a 50-year wedding anniversary. I watched my grandparents do it, and it was my dream since I was a young kid. I was like, this is the thing. I want to be that couple that has a 50-year wedding anniversary. And I don't get to have that. And that was hard. And so it's okay for it to be hard. And you are not alone. You are not alone. Rachel and I are sitting here rooting for you, telling you that it sucks in the in-between. But once you get on the journey, if it's the right journey for you, you get through it. And on the other side, it comes with knowing and such a deep self-love and an ability to extend love and acceptance to others that you didn't think was possible before, because we're all on our own journey. We're all doing our own thing. So if you need support in it, I want you to reach out. We have the club membership. You can absolutely come into the space with all of the other divorced women, be supported, learn from them, do the calls and the programs, help support yourself, right? We're here to lift you up. I always talk about this. Like, my job is to hold the light at the end of the tunnel. I am telling you, you're going to get through it. You don't know, but I am sitting here rooting for you down at the end, and I will hold you up until you get your feet underneath you, because you will get through this. We just all need the right support. So visit thecrazyexwivesclub.com. You can learn more about the club membership under services. You're already here doing the podcast. You're doing a lot of work. So give yourself some grace. Ask yourself what that whisper is really trying to tell you. And we'll be back next week with another great episode. And that's it. Another great episode of the Crazy Ex-Wives Club, a podcast for women learning how to heal from their divorce. Tune in next week for more advice and tips to help you figure out life after divorce. And until then, give yourself grace, do the best you can, and know that this is all part of the process.